Tributes have been paid to Sven Eriksson, former England manager, who's died at the age of 76. He took the top job in English football, the first non-British manager to do so, leading the team to the quarter-finals at 3 major tournaments during his 5-year spell. Well, back in January, he revealed he had, at best, a year to live after being diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. Among those paying tribute today is the Prince of Wales, the patron of the Football Association. He said this: "Sad to hear about the passing of Sven Eriksson. I met him several times as England manager and was always struck by his charisma and his passion for the game. My thoughts are with his family and friends, a true gentleman of the game." Sven's former partner, Nancy Dell'Olio, said, "It is with a heavy heart that I share the passing of my ex-partner Sven. Though our relationship had its ups and downs, I choose to remember the good times we shared and the moments that brought joy to our lives. When you love someone, that love never truly fades. Rest in peace, Sven. You will be missed." While Wayne Rooney, who was handed his debut by Sven, aged just 17, said, "Rest in peace, Sven. A special man. Thanks for the memories and all your help and advice. Thoughts and prayers with all his family and friends." Well, David Beckham spent some time with Sven before he died and posted this tribute to his former manager. "We laughed, we cried, we knew we were saying goodbye. Sven, thank you for always being the person you've always been, passionate, caring, calm and a true gentleman. I will be forever grateful for you making me your captain, but I will forever hold these last memories of this day with you and your family. Thank you, Sven. And in your last words to me, it will be okay." Goalkeeper Joe Hart, who played for Eriksson during his time as Manchester City manager, speaking on the radio last night, said he was different from the other managers and that he had a real love for the game.
You couldn't not respect him. You couldn't not behave under him. You know, as Chris was saying there, in that era of the hairdryer, you didn't want to cross Sven, but not because you were scared of him, because you didn't want to let the guy down. Too young to appreciate him. Too young, too early in the game to appreciate that there are some beautiful people in this game that are part of the game because they just love everything about it and they want everyone to be happy.
Well, there was, of course, a huge amount of media intrusion into his life during his time in England. But in a recent Amazon documentary, Sven explained how he would like to be remembered.
I hope you will remember me as a positive guy trying to do everything he could do. Don't be sorry. Smile. Thank you for everything. Coaches, players, the crowds. Been fantastic.
Let's talk now to former Managing Director of the FA, Adrain Bevington, who worked closely with Sven during his time with England. Adrain, good to talk to you this morning. You were really close to Sven, weren't you, when he was England manager? How would you describe him to anyone who didn't know him?
He was a wonderful person. He was a real pleasure to work with. He was such a calm man. He never got affected by the often crazy world that we exist in or existed in. He empowered people so much to get on with their work, and he made you feel good about yourself.
Do you think, Adrain, that in some ways that we maybe weren't ready for him? He was a little bit ahead of his time, wasn't he? And he did have a difficult time in the press when he was England manager. And I don't know whether we were at times surprised by how calm his reactions were. You mentioned he's calm. Well, he did seem to stay pretty serene the whole time.
Well, Sally, you were around it during that period,
I was.
And that was incredibly intense, and there was so much noise going on, and combined that with the sort of the superstar nature of the players that we had at that period as well. But behind the scenes, he never lost his cool. What you saw in the media was what you got behind the scenes. What you didn't always get quite as much of in the media was the devilish sense of humour that he had. He found a lot of it amusing, and when he reflected on things at the end of the day, You know, he would laugh about certain moments, and that made life in the frenzied space that we often operated in so much more enjoyable to actually exist in.
And I wonder if some people today might be slightly surprised by some of the stories we're hearing, because, you know, you mentioned we both worked during that period, didn't we, Adrian? And sometimes I can remember having to ask him some really difficult questions that might have made someone else angry, but you would ask him the question, he'd give you an answer, and then he'd say, right, should we have a cup of tea? And that was kind of him, wasn't it?
It was, and, you know, he was a very low-maintenance person. He went about his life in a very quiet manner. He had very high standards, but when there was a particular moment, a particular issue, blimey, it could be a real big story. But as you say, Sally, you know, there's been situations. I remember us in Amsterdam at one point. You were out there. It was the first time he'd surfaced after the whole situation with Faria Alam and a proposed move to Chelsea. There was a whole lot going on, but he maintained his dignity, and he was just a guy who, I think the players really liked him because they, you know, he had their back. He never criticised them publicly. He supported them. He was a positive person, and as he said himself, he wanted to be remembered as a positive guy. Well, he was, and he did it with a smile. And anyone who worked closely with him, including everybody in the media and the fans who ever encountered him, will have a smile about Sven, even in these sad circumstances.
Was he ready for the scrutiny that came with that England job? You know, coming from Sweden and taking on a job like that, we all know the scrutiny that goes with it, and that everybody feels they've got a vested interest, they've got an opinion on what the England manager does. Was he ready for that?
I don't think he was ready for the extremities around his private life. Don't forget, he'd come from Lazio and Sampdoria and Benfica, so he was used to, you know, the real, you know, powerful nature of the Italian media, everything football there. You know, he'd been around elite football for a long time, Ben, but I think the intrusion into his personal life was something that did surprise him. I know a lot of other people, most other people, would have been blown off course by it, but not Sven. You know, you had to put, as you did, Sally, as I did on a all too frequent basis, I had to call him and put certain things to him that were quite embarrassing, really. But he never made me feel uncomfortable in doing that. And, you know, he managed to give you support when actually you were the person trying to support him.
And Adrian, he was a real football man, essentially, wasn't he? That's kind of, I guess, when we come back to everything, football was the love of his life.
He absolutely adored the game. You know, I went out to see him in Sweden, you know, a couple of years ago, and we sat down, and he still would sit in his TV room at home when he'd watch, you know, particularly the English football, all the games. He was, you know, encyclopedic in his you know, his knowledge of the game, his passion for the game that he'd held from being a very young boy. And, you know, I think he felt he had the best football life, which, you know, he because he achieved so much when he didn't necessarily expect to achieve what he did, setting out in Sweden all those years ago. So, you know, I just think he was a wonderful football person. He was a wonderful individual, a great human being. And I've just got so many cherished memories of this guy.
Adrian, lovely to hear your thoughts this morning. Thank you so much for sharing those stories with us. Adrian Bevington.